it's not about holding things against our culture or our parents or whatever they did
Of
and how
course.
they were and how they had to do things. But it's about kind of looking at it from another point of view and saying, okay, well, now that I'm grown and now that I'm trying to get on this journey and create new habits and create a new way of thinking, how can I stick to what I know and stick to what I love, but at the same time, you know, make it so that I'm still able to reach my goals.
Welcome to the V-Shred Better Body, Better Life podcast, where we help you live your best life while working on your health and fitness goals. We're here to make your journey fun and inspiring.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Better Body, Better Life podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Vincent, and we have another one of our guests back with us, who's been the star of a couple episodes now, Coach Stephanie. And today we're going to be talking about the cultural relationship when it comes to health and nutrition and how that impacts the decisions that you make based on how you were raised when it comes to how you eat and how you look at fitness. So welcome back. And again, if you guys don't know who Stephanie is, you haven't watched any of the podcasts or listened to any of the podcasts before, she's just an all-around expert and lover of health and fitness. She's a mom. She has her bachelor in science and kinesiology and nutrition. She is NASM certified as well, and she comes from a Latina background, and so she can speak a little bit better on that versus my white butt. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, so let's just go ahead and jump right into this. First off, just explain kind of your cultural background and how that's influenced your approach to fitness and nutrition.
Yeah. So I grew up. My parents are Latin background. My dad is Venezuelan. My mom's Cuban. I grew up in Miami. So just a big Latino family, and a lot of the cultural norms that anybody who is from a Latin background is growing up with, and you know, we have staples in our diet. We have ways that we eat. We have all these cultural norms that come into play. Um, but as I got older and as I got more and more into the wellness aspect of my education, figuring out what I wanted to be when I grew up, I saw that some of the ways that my relationship with food was tied in when I was a kid weren't really going to be that helpful for me as I grew into an adult and as well as I got into the health and wellness industry. So I always think it's something important to touch on. It is very sensitive because we are very close to our culture and we never want to say this is wrong and this is right. But as you evolve as a person and as you evolve into a person going through a wellness journey, it is important to reflect back on some things that maybe can be changed or done in different ways.
Yeah. And so what are some ways that you, I guess, had to change versus like how you were raised and how you were taught to believe or how you were taught
Mhm.
to eat? What are some ways that what are some things you've had to adjust?
Yeah. So, one of the big things culturally growing up for me was, making sure that everything off my plate was finished.
Mm.
We weren't allowed to table without eating all of our food. My grandma lived with us. It was always, are you hungry? Have you eaten? Are you hungry? Have you eaten? Food was the center point of our household for, pretty much the whole day, whether it was having breakfast or lunch or dinner. And so understanding that it's okay to walk away from food on your plate when you feel satisfied was something that took me a long time to conquer and to understand that I wasn't disrespecting my family by not finishing eating. I wasn't saying, that I'm going to throw away money and groceries and this and that, but that it's okay to say I'm full and walking away from a plate of food that maybe isn't licked clean is okay.
And so those are some of the things that would get thrown out there when you were younger is
Yeah,
making sure you have to clean your plate, making sure that, or them almost like guilt tripping you into eating all your food because maybe others don't have that opportunity or whatever.
yeah. That was always a thing of, well, there's kids starving here and kids starving there. And it psychologically, it takes over your mind, to where you develop a habit as you become a adolescent and a young adult, and then even an adult, living on your own, and managing your own diet and your own lifestyle. And basically, you know, coming to an understanding of like, okay, wow, well, I feel full. I can always save this meal for later, right? I mean, I could just put it in the Tupper and eat it. I don't need to throw it away in the garbage, and I don't need to lick my plate clean. I can have this food a little bit later. But that, I know for a lot of cultures, that's a big psychological block for people. And I see it with my clients, they say, for the first time in my life, I was able to leave food on a plate and realize I'm full, I'm satisfied, I don't need to eat this. And that was a huge breakthrough for them. And, they could be in their 40s, 50s, even their 60s, coming from, that same culture as well, of going, okay, I'm going to push this plate away, but I'm not going to feel bad about it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think it's funny. Like, and it's usually like, I would say, like, I'm trying to think about like my own background, and we had those times when it was like, no, you're sitting there until your plate is clear. Like, you're not moving your feet till it's gone. And then like nowadays it's obviously way different, but like around holidays, you still kind of not see it being forced on people, but people just like kind of taking it upon themselves to do it. And then like, cause there's so much food that was prepared, so much went into preparing it. And like, I'll watch like my mom or myself or my sisters or someone, they'll get this big old plate and then they'll clear that plate. And then there's still a bunch of other food that like hasn't been touched. And so like, well, I got to go back for seconds. I'm like, you don't have to, but I get it. It's Thanksgiving. And so you can be a little bit more lenient on yourself. But yeah, no, I see that a similar relationship. So kind of walk me through like the types of foods that you were, that your family, that you guys were eating all the time.
Yeah. So, for the Latin culture, obviously a big staple across the board is going to be, a high carb diet, lots of rice, potatoes. I'm not Mexican, but I live in Mexico and I've been living here for the last 11 years. And, the culture of the tortillas here is huge. And, you'll sit down to a dinner at a friend's house and they'll just see the kilo of tortillas in the middle of the table. And it's not even like, okay, I'm going to put 2 tortillas on each person's plate and then no, it's like and you just keep reaching and you just keep reaching and you just keep reaching. And so for myself, what I can speak to is a high carb, diet culture. What a lot of people would call filler food. Obviously there's not a lot of protein on the table. There's might not be a lot of vegetables on the table, but there's a lot of filler food that helps you feel full and, kind of gets you through the day.
Filler food. What would you explain as a filler food?
I would explain like a simple carb kind of food, like a white rice, a white potato, white bread, corn or flour tortillas, things that fill up your belly essentially and get you to the next meal, but don't have a high nutritional value.
Okay.
It's not that food is bad 100%, but in the quantity that you're being given it's just a matter of getting you, just putting food on the table, making sure everyone's full, and then getting to the next meal.
Okay. And then so what were the other foods that would be included? Because I'm sure like whenever I'm having Mexican food, it's rice, beans, tortilla, and then some sort of protein. Yeah. So like I love Chipotle. And so like that, you guys probably spit on Chipotle when you're like, this isn't real Mexican food. But for me, that's about as authentic as it gets, baby. But like I love my huge burritos, and they're really good. But you're right, it's a ton of filler food and it's like a ton of calories, but I'm only really getting like a scoop. Like I got to make sure they do 2 scoops of chicken because otherwise they're skimping. And I got to say the second scoop after they do the first scoop to make sure that I get a quality size scoop and they don't skimp me on the scoops. You know what I'm saying? So like the filler food would just be like lean proteins. Oh no, sorry, not the filler food. The other food.
Yeah. And for the culture here and even the culture I grew up in, for example, We had a lot of pork, we had a lot of, ground beef, not lean, chicken every now and then. And like uh, my mom had this one skillet. She probably still has it. It's probably just hidden somewhere because I always give her a hard time about it. And she would cook everything on that skillet, but she would never empty out the oil. So over time, we would get like a 2-inch like puddle of oil with all the lard and all the gristle and everything.
Probably tastes so good.
It was amazing, but it's like she could burn down like a small country with the amount of oil in there, and then
Right.
just all like, and it was like canola oil too,
Right,
not
right.
even any, so, and yeah, and the amount of protein on the table was very sparse, to be
Yeah.
honest. So yeah, you're looking at a high simple carb content of food on the table. You're looking at not a lot of protein, and the protein that is being put on the table probably isn't, lean or considered, of a good nutritional value. And it's something that over time you work on breaking through and saying, okay, well, that's how I grew up. It doesn't make it wrong, but it's just not functional anymore for
Right.
where I'm trying to be within my goal.
And why do you think that is the norm? Like, why do you think it is load up on these carbs with not that much protein? Do you think it's a financial thing for the most part? Do you think it's just like what people have been believing and they just never really thought about changing it?
I think it's a combination of a lot of things. I think it's a large part of it probably is, economical. It's just what's easy and cheap to put on the table.
Right.
And a lot of it is just perpetuated by, generation after generation of it just being that way. And, my Caucasian friends when I lived in the States, I'd go over to their house and it would be the same thing, just different. There would always be pasta table or mashed potatoes or corn, canned corn. It was like, okay, put a big vat of corn on the table that came out of a can. And
I like to put my corn in my mashed potatoes. That's how white I am.
That's good. That's good. That is good. But it would be like 2 tablespoons of country crock thrown into the bowl, microwave the corn really quick, mix it up, add a bunch of just, regular iodized table salt on it.
Oh, yeah, baby.
And it's so good. I know. I'm like, my mouth is actually watering right now.
That's like all I eat on Thanksgiving. I have like a little bit of turkey and then like all the mashed potatoes.
Yeah, mashed potatoes. But yeah, when we speak about culture, it's not just an ethnic culture. It's the culture of as well of how you grew up.
Right.
Whatever your food culture was in your house for you as a kid, a lot of us, don't realize that when we grow up,
you hang on to that
into our and you hang on.
Yeah,
you do.
Yeah, and then what would you say? Like, so obviously, like the nutrition side of thing is huge. What would you say are like just some of the other like myths or misconceptions in your culture that you kind of had to get over as you grew up?
I think for me, a big part of it was there wasn't a lot of raw vegetables and stuff that we ate in my house. It just wasn't a big vegetable-based household and culture just in general.
You say that's a culture thing in general?
I would say in my house it was. As far as the Latino culture, like for example, here in, like I said, I live in Mexico. We have access to amazing agriculture here and produce and stuff. But again, it's not something that you see implemented in a ton.
Right.
And when I was growing up, our culture was canned and frozen, for a plethora of reasons. And so, you're looking at canned peas, like I said, canned corn, which isn't a vegetable. All these things that just don't help your process of once you get older, understanding values, nutritional values of food, and how finding a balance within all of the aspects of your carbs, your proteins, your fats, how that works. And again, a lot of it is economic, some of it is just generational, and some of it is it's also geographical. Sometimes you grow up in places that don't have access to a lot of fresh produce or good lean protein. So what do? Right? You have to survive and you have to put food on the table. But and even for my clients I work with, I'll get clients say, well, I'm Asian, so I always have to have rice. Or I get a lot of like Indian clients, Pakistani clients, and they'll say, we have to have naan at this meal and that meal and this
Right.
meal. I'm like, okay, I get that, but it we can't put it on every single meal. So we kind of have to find that balance of if this is important to you and if this is something that brings you back to a place in your life that you were a kid and it's a staple for you, I get that. But we have to then find a way to transition you into a healthier relationship with that food.
You're right. I think another part of it is like just whether or not your family is like health focused at all, which I don't really know about other cultures, but I can speak as an American, and we are not. My parents were not really giving a damn about kids eating vegetables or not eating processed foods. It was really more about like my parents I have two sisters, so there's three of us. We're all very similar in age, and so I think it was really just about like what's easiest, and like what's like a easy and cheap, and what's cheap. Like we didn't have a bunch of money growing up, and so it was like what like they both had to work full time, and so it was like what can I make quick when I get home from work that's not going to break the bank, and usually that's not the healthiest meals,
Yeah, and that's an important aspect of it too. Is like I'm a parent, so my block with how I grew up eating, and also, like you said, seeing that it was the best they could do. Like I would get sent to school with Lunchables,
Right. Oh
and
God, Lunchables are so good though.
oh,
You
so
felt
good,
like
so
a
good,
king if you had a Lunchable
so
at school,
good,
but then you look back and
yeah,
you're like, wow, that was
and
so bad for me.
and it's all sodium, and I did a Lunchable, a sleeve of Oreos,
And a
and a
tropic
Kool-Aid,
and yeah, what's that little Capri Sun? Oh God.
Capri Sun, and wish the best on my day. And then everyone wondered why we were bouncing off the walls and this and that. I'm like, okay, well, but it's the best that they could do,
Right.
And I remember like my mom, when she would come pick me up for like a doctor's appointment or something like that. I'd get out of school, and then on the way back to school, we'd stop at McDonald's, get the Filet-O-Fish, pound that with a soda in the back seat, and then go back to school.
Yep.
And now as an adult, and I was just back home in Florida last month, and it's always a struggle for me when I go back because, my dad will always throw in my face like, well, you ate all that and here you are, you're fine, and this and that, and you survived. I'm like, I did,
But I stopped.
but I stopped. Yeah, I stopped, and it's not about holding things against their culture or our parents or whatever they did and how they were and how they had to do things. But it's about kind of looking at it from another point of view and saying, okay, well, now that I'm grown and now that I'm trying to get on this journey and create new habits and create a new way of thinking, how can I stick to what I know and stick to what I love, but at the same time, make it so that I'm still able to reach my goals. And as a parent now myself, it's something that I still am trying to find the balance with my daughter because, I would say 85% of the time we eat, vegetables and protein, all that stuff. But
that's great.
Do I have Eggos in my freezer? Yes, I do. Do we have Pringles? Yes, we do.
Yeah.
But but that is like every once in a while, and it's not it's not a staple of our type. And I think that that's the important thing to realize is you can find the balance and you can plug in things that you grew up with, but it's not an everyday, all day thing.
Right. And I mean, I'm not a parent, but I assume a piece of it is also like, what will my child actually eat? What's going to like make them happy? Like if my parents sent me to elementary school with some lunch that had like raw broccoli in it and like, I don't know, just lean chicken breast and rice, I'd look at that and be like, I hate this. And I'd be trying to trade other kids for their Lunchable, you know, versus like if you have that crappy food, it's like way more enjoyable as a kid because it obviously tastes amazing because it's so processed. But like it's like I was rail thin growing up. And so I think for my parents, it was like, let's just give him whatever he'll eat, you know? And obviously I like, you talk about Eggo waffles, like I literally had 4 Eggo waffles before every day of high school, like every single day. And I would put them in the toaster like right before the bus was coming, or if I was driving, if I was old enough to drive, and I would literally cut 4 Eggos into a square, and I would eat 4 Eggos in 4 bites, and I'd be off to school, and that's all I would eat. And then I would take like these chocolate covered granola bars, and I'd eat about 6 of those before lunch. And so I'm just like eating all this crap. I was probably averaging like 50 grams of protein a day for my entire high school. And I was like, why didn't I build any muscle? Well, that's why, kid. And so like I learned what I was doing wrong. But like, do you think that you carry that with you? Like, do you think that that makes you have a poor relation? Like you talked about like the clean your plate mentality. Do you think that affects you later on in life, or that it sticks with you a lot?
Yeah, it sticks with you, and it also like is a part of what you will reach for as an adult when you are in a high stress situation.
Oh yeah.
You know, kind of like you go back, like you said, you go back to that moment of like, well, you know, this is what I used to eat when I was a kid, when you were going through whatever phase of your life, and that's another thing that I get from clients will say, you know, I was doing great for 3 weeks and I had a stressful thing, and then I sat down and I ate like, you know, something that they haven't eaten in years.
Oreos.
They're like, it just Oreos, yeah, whatever. They're like, I don't even eat them that often. I'm like, well, it all goes back to a trigger from when you're a kid and how you grew up. And I want to touch on real quick something you mentioned about the how you were skinny and all this stuff and you weren't putting on muscle. So a lot of the issue with the filler foods, as I call them, is that you get kids that are eating, but they're still malnourished.
Yeah, that's 100% what I was.
Because of the amount of filler food.
Yep.
And malnutrition with children is a huge issue. And I think that's something that I know, you know, in the US, it's something that's kind of going on with them trying to change up the process of school lunches and what we're feeding our kids and putting more eyes on putting, you know, labels on things. And we just, here in Mexico 2 years ago, they just started putting basically labels on food that say this is unhealthy, this is high in sodium, this is high in, you know, trans fat, whatever, saturated fat. But you see kids and you're like, well, they look fine, they're running around, right? They've got plenty of food, but they're not actually getting good nutrition due to the fact of just a lot of filler foods in their diet. They're getting like that little burst of energy from, you know, 4
and temporarily full,
and then 6. Right, but you're not being nourished, and that's a big part, I think, of understanding within your culture. Like, is this food, is it filling my soul and my heart? Yes, but is it giving me what I need? You know,
those Eggos were speaking to me, but they weren't actually serving me.
Yeah, it was like my filet of fish, you know, white bun, mystery fish, tartar sauce, you know, and then a yellow slice of Kraft single cheese, but it's so good.
Yeah, that's funny. And the Oreos thing, I wonder if I would have just like tracked my macros once as a kid, like what I would be eating. It was literally like Eggos in the morning, chocolate covered granola bars. I would literally have minimum 4 before lunch. And then at lunch, when I got old enough to drive, I was driving to Chipotle every day. Before that, it was like the pizza that the lunch would offer, or like
pizza.
Yeah. They were kind of bomb, not gonna lie. But and then like don't even know what I would have for dinner. And then literally like every single night before bed, I would have like a full sleeve of Oreos with milk. And so it was like just the worst diet ever. Probably eating a bunch of calories. But like I was like, why? And I started going to the gym when I was like 14, and I was going consistently since I was probably 15. First year I kind of didn't really take that serious. But and then I was wondering like why those 3 years in high school I wasn't like getting big. It's like, well, because you had no protein for 3 years. And so it's like, you look back on it and you're like, wow, these were just like, I just didn't know, because like that was just like what was around, that was in the fridge, that was in the pantry. My parents didn't know nutrition. Like my parents only learned nutrition after I started a fitness company, you know, and I didn't really even get results until I started this fitness company. And so like learning like what you actually need to have, and doesn't like, and people are always thinking that like they have to go. It's like we talked about on the last episode where we talked about overtraining. And if anybody hasn't heard that episode yet, great episode, go listen to it. But like people always want to go from 0 to 100. And they think that like if they're eating healthy, they have to eat perfectly. No. Like people ask me all the time, like what's the secret to being in shape or getting in shape or having my body? And I'm like, moderation and consistency. That's literally it. I don't eat perfect all the time. Like people, like I literally just had people in town this past weekend that I don't really know that well, girlfriend's friends, and one of the guys, he gets our ads all the time, and he's like, man, it's actually really nice to see that you actually eat like this, because I was having like ice cream with Reese cups in it.
Okay,
yeah, he's like, oh, this is real, you know, and it's like, and that's what people don't understand is like they think that like all that is for a show, and it's not for a show, like. But what I'm not really showing is the 80% of the time that I'm not having fun foods, you know, and I do work my ass off in the gym not every single day, but 6 days a week. I'm training hard, you know, and most of the time I'm eating really good. But that other time I am having pizza or wings or cookies or muffins or ice cream or whatever I want to have, honestly. And so, yeah, it was funny. He was like, oh, wow, it's really nice to see that you actually you walk the walk. You don't just talk the talk. And I think that's important for people to understand that, yes, like what we're talking about right now, the cultural relationship with it. You were taught something, not necessarily taught something. You picked up on something as a kid subconsciously, and you need to learn what's good, but that doesn't mean that you have to get away from that. Like you're never going to get away from your culture unless you just completely change personas, you know, but like you're never really going to get away from it. And so like, that doesn't mean that you have to, like if you have a Latina background, it doesn't mean you get away from the tortillas and the rice and the beans, but that means that maybe you're just a little bit more moderate with the portions that you actually serve yourself, or incorporating more protein or whatever it might be, you know?
So 2 things I want to go back to and remind me, because my brain is always like in a million places at once. But the first thing I want to touch on, which you brought up, is like the 0 to 100 thing, which is, the part of anyone's wellness journey is, you know, they're starting here and they want to be here and they want to get from A to B.
We're all impatient. We want fast results.
Yeah, we all want fast results, you know, but one of the things I want to really bring up is like it's not about that you have to eat everything organic and fair trade and perfect. No, you can have a healthy lifestyle and a healthy diet with just your everyday food that you can find anywhere. So, because I think that's a big thing. So like, you know, because I get clients say, you know, I can't buy everything organic. I'm like, cool.
It's
like,
it's too expensive to eat healthy.
Yeah, it's too expensive. I'm like, and I get it. I get that for some families it is, and for some parts around the world it is.
Right.
However, there are small things that you can start to make changes on that will eventually start to change your perspective on food and change your perspective on how you grew up and help you get better results. Like, for example, the rice. Okay, well, maybe instead of white rice, go with brown rice. You know, start with that concept of going, okay, well, I'm gonna swap a simple carb for a complex carb.
Nice,
and it'll help you go for a little bit longer. It'll give you more energy when you're working out. It'll be better for your digestion.
Or potatoes to sweet potatoes.
Exactly, potatoes to sweet potato. Maybe white bread to, if you're able to,
Ezekiel.
eat it, you know, wheat bread. Yeah, something where you're like, okay, I'm making this small switch. It's really not going to hit me in the pocket that much. But it's not only switching my relationship with, but if you're a parent, it's your child's relationship with food as well. And then the other thing that you talked about was like how you grew up and you just didn't know any better. I was the sickest kid you ever met when I was growing up. I was in and
Sickest,
out
like
of
sick or like sick?
well, I wish it would have been sick, but it wasn't like that. I was like always in doctor's offices. I was always getting allergy tests. I had asthma. I had all these issues growing up, and my parents, God bless them, just doing the rounds of doctors and shots and this and that, and we don't know what's wrong with it. We don't know what's wrong with it. We don't know what's wrong. Well, much like yourself, when I got old enough to start making my own choices for my food and cooking my own food and just doing some basic research as I was getting into health and wellness, um, I started to realize I was like, you know what? I think growing up, I had food allergies that no one ever picked up on.
Hmm.
And I
Oh,
started once I turned 18, I started to do like elimination. Like, okay, I'm gonna cut out dairy for like a week and see how I feel. And then I was like, okay, I can eat yogurt, but I can't drink cow's milk because my throat gets tight and I get funny. And then I can eat this, but I can't eat this because when I eat this, my stomach hurts or I get bloated. And I ended up doing a bunch of tests myself and reading an amazing book about food allergies. And
what's
it
the
like
book, if you don't
all
mind me asking?
it's it's called well, there's two. There's the blood type diet and there's the Chinese. It's one. The other one is called the Chinese study. And the Chinese study is actually a great book if you're looking to read about cultural changes over time. And it's about how the Asian culture, we were seeing people of Asian descent living into their hundreds
Hmm.
sometimes. And over time,
With
the
fantastic
Asian
mobility, like the Asian
yeah,
squat.
like yeah, they were like still, they're still going at 104 years old. But over the last, and this book was written in the 90s, so it would be, what is that now? Like almost 30. I always think like the 80s were like
Yes,
just
because
10
I was
years
born in the
ago.
90s and I am now over 30, so you're right. It's
I know.
30s.
I, I saw a thing on TV yesterday. It was like 30 years of Friends, like the show Friends, and I was like, oh
Yeah.
no, it can't be. It can't be. But this book talks about how the Asian culture, and it mostly takes place in China and Japan, how over the last 30 to 40 years, their life expectancy has shortened. And it's
Hmm.
mostly due to the impact of corporate food chains
Yeah.
and the change of younger kids' diet and how like the life expectancy of Asians in the next 50 to 100 years is going to be closer to 70, 80s when we saw them living into their hundreds.
Wow.
So the Chinese study is a great book for anybody looking to kind of read up on how our cultures changed and how,
Would you blame that on
sometimes
America? It's kind of the Americanization effect. Just mass producing
a little bit,
food,
a little bit of,
processing
yeah,
everything.
yeah. Some of it was some of the big US corporations coming in, but a lot of it also had to do, and I saw this when I was living in San Francisco, going to Chinatown, you know, you would go into these like little Asian markets and you would see processed even Asian chips and candy. And you
Everybody
see it
getting
in
cheaper.
Mexico too. In Mexico, everything is, everything has chile on it or tahini or this and that. Like, I mean, when I take my daughter to a birthday party, any candy or any chip on the table is like spicy, hot, dipped in this, dipped in that. So it's about how like, and sometimes the cultural change goes the wrong way,
Right.
right? Instead of getting healthier, we're getting worse because also people's palates are changing. But there was a Chinese study and the blood type diet book, which
Okay.
I read that my blood type was not good for eating a lot of red meat and lactose and some other things. And you can take it with a grain of salt. It's kind of like horoscope a little bit. Like you can read every single horoscope and be like, well, that could be me, that could be me. But
I'm not a horoscope
it's
guy.
cool because it yeah. Well, anyone who's like, okay, astrology, well, you can read whatever you want to read into it. But it triggered me to say, well, I'm going to follow this and see if this is right. And for the most part, it was for me. And so changing changing what I thought was culturally normal for me impacted me not just in my fitness, but in my overall wellness and just being a healthy adult and not having asthma anymore and not struggling with all these weird feelings of like, why is my body feeling this way after I eat this? Um, so yeah, so I think like, seeing the impact of what we're doing over time and then also just being aware of like, and we talked about this in the last podcast, was listening to your body. Well, yeah, listen to what your body is telling you and how do you feel sometimes after you eat these foods or, like when I go back to Florida, I was only there for 5 days, but I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, like my rings didn't fit. Like I was like packed with sodium, hands were tied. I was like, okay, this is why I made these choices for myself.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, it's tough to avoid that when you're traveling too. Like when I go home to Ohio,
Yeah.
I could probably, like, if I really wanted to, I could probably like go grocery shopping and meal prep. Like my parents, they're still in the house that I grew up in. And so there's still a kitchen I could use, a grill I could use, but I'm traveling, it's kind of a vacation for me. I'm just enjoying myself. And so, yeah, I'm going to Cracker Barrel and Bob Evans and Waffle House because those are delicious. And so, yeah, I'd for those types of trips, but like if it is like something that's just like not vacation, yeah, I am trying to make better decisions, but it's just harder, You can't be as accurate when you're traveling as you can when you're home. It's just, so you got to find, it's even more important to make sure that like what you talked about with like those small changes that you can make where it's like from white rice to brown rice. And so if you are eating out at some restaurant, there are little healthier decisions that you can make that will make a bigger difference and will also help you with that relationship in your head, like because I think like if you start looking at food as like utility rather than just pure comfort, like I think that's what some people are just completely missing, where they're like I'll have like people ask me like, how do you eat the same, like Monday through Friday, I eat pretty much the exact same thing every single day. And I'll have like friends who are like, or my parents are like, how do you eat the same thing every single day? I'm like, well, I've changed my relationship with food. It's no longer this thing. Like sometimes I should say, sometimes it's no longer this thing that I go to for pleasure. There's too many people that are just going to food for pleasure all the time. And they use food as their reward for completing anything, and that just creates a terrible relationship with it. And so like most of the time I'm looking at food as fuel, right? And then the other, like I said, 20% of the time I am looking at food as pleasure, where I'm looking at it as like I said, when I was growing up, before bed every single night, I would probably have a whole sleeve of Oreos with some milk. And maybe that's ingrained in me now, but like I do get some late night cravings occasionally. And but when I'm on track, like Monday through Friday, I'm not really worried about it because I've turned off that switch in my head. But Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the occasional holiday, whatever. Yes, I'm going to get some ice cream, or yes, I'm going to make chocolate chip cookies or whatever it might be. Or like Sunday morning, I want Krispy Kreme donuts because I'm home and enjoying myself. Like I will still enjoy that and I won't feel bad about it because I know most of the time I'm not doing that. And I'm not allowing that to change my relationship with food,
Yeah. And that's a great point because at the end of the day, the word culture can just be the culture that you create for yourself.
Yeah.
Food.
Yeah.
It's like, it's your own culture. Like, what is your relationship and what is your culture with food? And I'm like you, I am an eat to feel person. And I am a foodie. I do love food. I do love flavor, but same as you, pretty much Monday through Friday, I'm like, okay, this is what I'm eating to just get me through my week. On the weekends, maybe Saturday or Sunday, I'll have something kind of off topic for me. But for the most part, and same thing, when I go home, my parents, I'm like, I was just home in Florida. My mom's like, send me a list of what you want and I'll go grocery shopping. I was like, I need eggs, I need salad, I need this, I need that. And she was just like, okay, and then we got there and I could see like my section of the fridge versus like their section of the fridge. But yeah, I still ate off, but it wasn't like a complete derailment of 5 days of my life. So
that's
and
actually a
this is
fantastic
a
point.
thing. Yeah, like, and this is a big thing for my clients that travel and go visit family or go on vacation. The ones that are a little bit more ahead in their journey and have kind of made that switch in their head to make this a lifestyle, they'll always say, "Oh my gosh, I came back from vacation or cruise and either I didn't gain weight or I only gained 2 pounds. And I know that's water weight." And they're like, "This is a new me." Because in the past, the minute I get on that plane, it's like, well, the 6 a.m. beer at the airport and
Yeah.
chips on the plane when I really don't need them and all this stuff and food. So when we're talking about culture, yeah, it's what you grew up with. It's what, like you said, was just ingrained and fed into you literally and figuratively. But it's also what you establish for yourself once you're able to.
Yeah. And I loved what you said about like when you're traveling, like having pieces of like certain meals that you aim for to be healthier. Cause that's something that I definitely do that I didn't even realize I did until you just kind of said that. Like if I'm going somewhere and I'm Airbnb-ing a house or I'm going home to Ohio or wherever I'm going, I will make sure, like, I know that I want my breakfast. Like, I know that that sets me up for a good day. It's a good number of calories. It's a good balance of macros for me. My body is used to it. And so pretty much everywhere I go, I will order eggs, rice, and hot sauce and a specific seasoning to wherever I'm going so that I can at least have one meal that I know that I'm ready for, that I'm used to. And then everything after that, like I know that like I'm not going to have every meal that I have when I'm out of town, but if I can make 1 or 2 meals per day, the meals that are healthy and that I'm used to and that I like, then that's better than nothing. It's like I'm not going completely off the rails, but I'm still not giving up like my social time just to stay on track.
Right. And a big part of that too is keeping your palate on track, because it's like if you take something that is familiar and if you take something that you're already used to, like it just sets you up for your day. Like you said, like for me, when I go back home to visit my parents, a big thing is like having a big salad at least once a day, like whatever it is. And that salad and that crunchiness and that rawness just kind of is like, okay, just remember, like, they're probably going to order a pizza for dinner tonight, and you're going to be out by the pool, and there's going to be chips and salsa and beer and seltzer. So this just kind of is my little corner of like sanity. Like, okay, I had my salad. I'm like with your breakfast. It's like that just sets you up, and it keeps your brain going. Remember, you can have fun, but don't go off the rails. And like, for example, we went to the theme parks one of the days and we were in line for a ride. My daughter got hungry. I was like, I'll jump out and go, find something quick. And, everything around the thing was little carts of chips and this and that.
Theme
and
parks are the worst.
Theme park food, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
But the best.
And like, I kind of, that, and I kind of went back to being a kid, like, oh my gosh, like I want all, they have Fritos and they have the Mickey ice cream things and like
Dippin'
all
Dots.
these things. And then I was like, and I was just like, okay, no. I was like, and I found the compromise. I got a pretzel, a salted pretzel, and then I got a container of watermelon because they did have fresh fruit. And I was like, okay. So I, ease my way back in line, fighting in front of like 100 people. And I get back and my daughter's like, what you get? I'm like, I got pretzel and watermelon. And she was like, okay. So, we're all splitting. And my mom is like, we didn't have any ice cream. I'm like, Mom, she doesn't need ice cream. Like, we're not going to get ice cream right now. Like, she pounded the watermelon and she had half the pretzel and then we split the other half. But it's those little compromises that you make. I'm like, is the pretzel the best choice? No, but I'm going to get some fruit to go with it, and I'm going to try to balance this out the best I can in the situation that I'm in, versus like just, I'm at a theme park. I'm just going to get whatever the heck I want. You know what I mean?
But it is good to have that. It's like you're not just going to get whatever you want because you're at a theme park, but you're also at a theme park. And so you're going to not be that person where you're like, no, I brought my steamed vegetables and we're going to snack on those. Like, get out of here. Like, I don't like you, you know? And so like, it makes you a normal human.
Yeah. And like, and I did get the cheese sauce and I dipped it in like a little bit of cheese sauce. And I was like, I felt like in Bridesmaids when she drank at the car, she's like, that's fresh.
Yeah.
And I'm allowing myself and my daughter and my mom to, to have something fun and different that we normally wouldn't have. But then I'm like, but we gotta work through this watermelon, because this is at least something that is fresh and real and whole, while we're waiting in this line.
Right.
But again, that all comes back to like that, I call it like that zoom out moment in the movies, where like the protagonist kind of has that moment where it's like you're at a crossroads of a situation. I know people are like, oh my gosh, it's a theme park thing, but that could have been a whole spiral for the rest of the day, and then going into the night and like,
and then how your daughter grows up and the snacks that she goes to. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. So then would you say there are like specific dishes now that you've made healthier that you try to, that like maybe you grew up eating that now you try to, I guess, make a different way for your daughter?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for us, living here in Mexico where we live, like, a big thing that's kind of come in here in the last 5 or 6 years have been tortillas made from nopal, which is like the cactus tree. So they're basically like ground cactus flour, and that's been like a game changer for us because it's not white flour, it's not pure corn. So the nopal tortillas have become kind of a staple here in Mexico, which has been a game changer.
Are you saying Nepal?
Well, in Spanish, in Spanish we say nopal.
Okay.
It's basically just a cactus.
Okay.
And
it's literally a tortilla made from a cactus. I've never heard of that.
It's literally a tortilla, yeah. And they now have like nopal chips. So like baked, tortilla, not tortilla, they look like tortilla chips, but they're made from the cactus.
Right.
Resource we have literally everywhere here in Mexico,
Right.
It's like cricket granola bars in the States.
Vegas needs to get on that. We got plenty of cacti.
Yeah. And you know what? It tastes the same. Like I'm sure one of my Mexican friends, if they were here, they'd pop up behind me and they'd be like,
spit on you for saying that.
Yeah. But again, it's making that one swap. You know what I mean? Like, obviously if we go out, I can't control it. I'm not going to take my own, nopal tortillas to a restaurant. But if we're home and my daughter's like, Mom, I want a few quesadillas. Okay, well, we're going to make it the cactus. That's been one of the things that I switch over for her. Obviously, we do a lot of brown rice versus white rice. And I myself have made the switch over to focusing on like whole beans versus refried beans here. If I can help it here at home, I try to just boil them whole and mash them here if I can. But the refried beans are usually refried in pork lard, and a lot of highly processed things. So again, it's just like you can still have beans and rice and tortillas and whatever your staple is, but we just have to find a way to make like those small changes that it's going to create a better relationship for my daughter with food. And it's also just going to make her feel better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And
I go back to, like I told you, being that sick kid and just wondering like, what the heck is wrong with me?
Yeah. Know? And she'll see you doing it too. Like that's the other thing is like kids, they're monkey see, monkey do, And so if they pick up on you actually like putting effort into just not, and it's not like you're putting like too much effort into creating every single meal so that it's perfect. It's like you're just making these small little changes that she's going to see where she's like, oh, we live a very normal life, but I see the little bit of extra effort that's going into making something a little bit better for me. And so it not only creates that better relationship, but it also like shows her that like this is what she should do, she picks up on that without even wanting to.
Yeah. And, for like you were saying earlier with, the parents that both work full time and the clients that I have that are, I get home from work and I've got to do this and I've got to do that and my kids want to eat this. I'm like, I get it. Like it's not always going to be perfect, like none of us are June Cleaver, none of us are Martha Stewart. Like we're all just doing what we can to like get through the day and make sure our kids are fed and our families are fed. But it's just those little tiny tweaks that if you can do it, both financially and time-wise, it makes a big difference. And like you said, your kids see you doing it, and then that's just one little tiny shift towards the positive in your home culture, whatever that is for you.
Yep. Yeah, that's good. And so last question I have for you, and then we'll get out of here. We're pretty good at going pretty long on these, is how do you think, like obviously you've had to make a lot of strides in educating yourself about like what proper nutrition is, and you've had to figure out what you want those changes that you can make be in. And it's going to be case by case with probably every parent out there, because there is no one size fits all for really anything in life, right? But how do you think that like the education and the awareness related to fitness and nutrition can be improved within your culture or any culture?
I think the biggest thing is with the person that is going through this, just really being honest with themselves and just saying, basically like letting go of whatever guilt or association they have with it, and understanding that it's not about rejecting or saying this was all wrong. It's just about saying that was a part of my life, and now I'm in this part of my life, and how
new
can
chapter.
A new chapter. You're not burning the book, right? It's the other chapters are still there, and they made you who you are today. So that's a great thing. But it's about going, what can I always tell my clients, just pick one thing a week, one goal, whatever it is. I want to get in 3 workouts. I want to, eat more fruit, just whatever it is. So within this cultural change that you're trying to implement, pick one thing at a time and just say, this month, I'm going to do this. I'm going to switch from simple carb to a complex carb. And that's going to be my start. And don't overthink it. Don't think it's wrong. Don't push it aside. Embrace it. And then, we have, we're in 2024, almost 2025. Like we're not in the 80s and 90s or even 70s anymore, where we didn't have access to all this information and great products and things that we can say, okay, well, cool. Now we can start moving into this aspect of nutrition, but still keep what we love and what is our comfort food near and dear.
Right. And yeah, you say now we have all this information. I would even go as far as saying we have maybe too much information, and
we do. Yeah.
It can be tough to sort through it.
Sort through it. But, like even the clients will message me sometimes and say, I'm gluten-free, I'm dairy-free, I'm everything free, how do I make a dessert, or how do I do this? And, sometimes I'll jump online real quick and it'll take some looking through, but I'll find something and I'm like, oh, look, check this out. And they're like, I didn't know that existed. That option existed for me.
Yeah.
So there are ways to go around what your maybe not so healthy staple is. You just have to find it, and it's going to be trial and error, and it's probably going to push you out of your comfort zone, but it's going to keep you progressing through this journey.
Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, but people probably also have these ideas of being gluten-free or being whatever free just because they think they should be. Like I'm nothing free. Like everything goes. But like I'm doing it in moderation. And so like, sure, yes, some people, they do have a gluten intolerance or a lactose intolerance or whatever it might be. But I think some people that go into it thinking like, I'm giving up gluten, it's like, well, if some of your favorite foods have gluten and you're giving up gluten, how long is that really going to be sustainable, versus just being like, I'm not going to have this most of the time, but then sometimes I'm going to have it. Like I don't respond the best to dairy. And so I don't have dairy all the time, But I'll tell you what, Saturday, Sunday rolls around. I love my ice cream and Reese cups. And I don't really care how it affects me because it allows me to enjoy, it allows me to stick to my diet the other time easier because I know that's coming.
Yeah. And that's a good point. And there's two parts that I'll touch on really quick. So one, like my daughter, like we're not gluten-free in my house, but when I bake with her, I do bake gluten-free options. Why? Because I know that if I make 12 muffins for the week, she's probably going to go through at least 9 or 10 of those, right, throughout the week. And so I'm like, you know what? And in a way, it's almost like I feel like less guilty because I'm like, okay, we're going to do this gluten-free chickpea powder muffin, you know? And we'll add some chocolate chips. Actually, we baked on Sunday. It was a chickpea flour, and we added raisins and chocolate chips to it. And I feel a little bit like, okay, well, this is my okay, I'm going to cut out this so that we can have a little bit more of it and not feel so bad. But yeah, and the other aspect, which maybe this would be another podcast we do, was about how a lot of these gluten swap options are sometimes just as
worse for you
and just as like issue. Yeah, they're going to cause more issues at the end of the day than maybe just like you said, having that wheat pasta one time a week and you taking a lactate pill or
I was gonna say it's taking some enzymes, right? Yeah.
So there's the yin and the yang with that whole culture, because that's a culture in and of itself, like saying I'm this free and that free because I choose to be. But yeah, so it's like I said, I find the balance. You know, we do almond milk, we don't do cow's milk. We do panela cheese, which is like a lactose-free cheese that's made here. That's very popular in Mexico. And yeah, so we make these little balances, but we're still enjoying the foods that we love. It's just with a different twist on it.
Right. Yeah. And like what you said about like maybe it's better to have like that one meal because like you should have a little bit of gluten because the alternative is maybe even unhealthier. Well, like it's like what I said, like if not like looking at the bigger picture, if not having gluten, if some of your favorite foods have gluten in them and you're giving up gluten, the alternative here is like it's either for a lot of people it's either giving up the gluten for a short amount of time and then realizing that this is not something they can stick to and then completely quitting. So it's the difference between having a couple meals a week that have gluten in them or just literally not following a diet. Like that's what it can come down to for some people.
You know, yeah, and then the deprivation kicks in, and then your brain just goes, "I'm just going to have a whole pizza one day or a whole bowl of pasta because I haven't had it in a year."
And then you're like, "Oh, I had that whole pizza yesterday. Today, I'm going to have this," and then it's been a week, and then it's been a month, and all of a sudden you've gained 10 pounds, and you're like, "Shit, what happened?" Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's the balance, and it's like, and I get the people. There are people with celiac disease, and there are people that cannot.
Yes, 100%.
And I understand that.
This does not relate to everybody.
They have no choice, you know. But if you're doing it for, and I get maybe if you're doing like I want to try, and I have clients say I want to try to go gluten free. Like, okay.
I think it's great to try.
3 weeks in, yeah. And they'll say, you know what, I felt good, but I definitely missed this and I don't miss that. So I'm gonna re-implement, you know, gluten, but just maybe only 2 times a week or 3 times. I'm like, hey, whatever. You know, you found your path. That's fantastic.
Yep. Like I said, when people ask me what's like someone literally commented on one of my posts the other day and they're like, what's the one thing you can like attribute your physique to? And all I said was consistency. That's it. And sometimes I'll say moderation because like that's the other thing is people are like, how do you eat like if someone sees me eating bad, they're like, how do you eat like this? And I'm like, well, I don't eat like this most of the time. Or if someone sees me eating good, they're like,
you caught me on the one day I'm having it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, you're not seeing the other 5 days of the week that I literally have the exact same meals, which luckily I am like quite robotic in my brain where I'm okay with that. Like I actually prefer that because I don't have to think about like what I'm going to be eating every day. I actually like having the exact same breakfast, the exact same shake before the workout, exact same shake after the workout, exact same lunch, exact same dinner. I enjoy that. Don't know why, but I do. And I think it comes down to that thing where it's like I treat my nutrition like it's serving me rather than just something that I'm getting pleasure from. Like I still do have meals that I find pleasure in. I still do binge sometimes. Like I'm human, right? But most of the time I'm putting in my body what I think is going to help me reach my goals. It's going to help give me energy for a workout. It's going to help me sleep better. It's going to help me feel more full. It's going to fuel my muscles or help me recover, whatever it might be. It's not just like, oh, that sounds really good and tasty, so I'm going to have it. But I still have that sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. And at the end of the day, and that's what I always tell people, I'm like, it's mental. Like if
Huge.
your diet is consistent and you're going to stay on mental track the whole day. Like I live in Mexico. At any point in time, I can get a text. Hey, we're going out to get margaritas on the marina. Come with us. I'm like, okay, I'll go. I'll have a skinny margarita, no salt. And when I get my guacamole bowl, I ask the guy for sliced cucumbers and I dip my cucumbers in instead of my chips.
Yeah.
So I'm like, can I still go out with my friends to grab drinks? Absolutely. Like, I'm not going to say no. It's Thursday afternoon. Sorry, I can't because I got to have my hard-boiled egg. But when you stay on track and when you are able to make those small changes and just say, I know that this is what I need to eat, you know what your results are going to be, which are going to be successful. And you're not going to wake up the next morning going, oh no, like I really messed myself up. You know what I mean?
Yep. 100%. Well, cool. That's all really good info. We've gone quite a long. We actually broke we broke our personal best for longest episode. But I think we went over so much good stuff. I actually learned quite a bit in this episode, which I really appreciate. Like I said, I'm about as white as they come, and my upbringing and the foods that I ate, and I mean, it's like typical American. Like if anybody was gonna like pick out the food, it was Pop-Tarts and Eggos and Oreos, like all the nonsense foods. So this was like really educational for me. Is there anything else that you want to say before we hop off here?
No, I think we covered everything. And yeah, just focus on small changes, small steps. Don't be afraid to step out of your comfort and don't feel like you're leaving anything behind because all you're doing is building a new future and a new chapter for yourself. Yeah.
It's beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being here with us. And if anybody's wanting to listen to those previous episodes with Stephanie, we've had, I think this is our 4th one with you. So make sure you're going to listen to them all. Then if anybody's wanting to work with Stephanie, obviously you guys can sign up for any of our coaching plans at any time and just request her and we can get you going. But thank you for being here on another beautiful episode and I will talk to you later.
All right. Thank you, Vince. Bye guys. Have a good one.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of V-Shred's Better Body, Better Life podcast. Whether you're doing one of our programs, taking our supplements, or just doing things on your own, tune in every week for exclusive content with Vince, V-Shred trainers, and special guests as they share valuable tips around motivation, workouts, food, and living a healthier lifestyle. See you next time.